Hello everyone and welcome to the Maxon booth. End of day 2 here at SIGGRAPH 2024 in Denver, Colorado. I'm accompanied by some of the most amazing artists showcasing how they're using Maxon 1 in their workflows to see how they can bring to life some of the most amazing, dramatic, powerful imagery you'll see on any screen anywhere in the world. And to my left, our closer for today, Anders Rahm. Please give him a big Maxon round of applause. Woo!
Thank you, thank you. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
We'll see you in a little bit. Yep, good to go? Okay. All right, hi everybody out in digital land. Hi everybody, thanks for joining us here today. My name's Anders Rahm, and I am with Raw Cereal. I'm co-founder and partner, and we are an entertainment-based creative production company. Most of our work is focused on concerts and touring events, installations. We do a lot of concert visuals, a lot of arch viz. There's a lot at play here. You'll know our work from acts like Morgan Wallen, Megan Thee Stallion, Kid Cudi. The list goes on. We founded about 3 years ago. We're coming up on our 3rd year, and my co-founder is Court Lawrence, who sadly couldn't be here with us today. He's a stage designer by trade, production, lighting, things along those lines. And then I myself have a history in video production. I've got a background in mostly producing, creative direction, and direction. I've worked on everything from manufacturing videos to America's Got Talent to concert visuals. So we're all over the board: broadcast, TV, XR, AR. I've had my hands in producing quite a few different elements across the board. A little bit about Raw Cereal. We've got a deep appreciation for art forms in all flavors, and we're dedicated to philanthropic ideas, uninhibited creativity, and lifelong trust with our clients, partners, as we walk the journey of ultimate self-expression. We've got a lot at play that we're really always looking to push the boundaries. And here's our tagline: a raw and cereal legacy with every encounter. You could be that dancing person. And here's a quick look at our reel, just a little bite-sized look at some of our work. And we'll discuss some of this that you'll see here throughout the presentation. And you may see some of your favorite acts out there. All right. So, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so Cinema 4D in our pipeline. Really what we're talking about today is how we use Cinema 4D in entertainment, and specifically for concert touring. Cinema 4D is at the base of a lot of our work. We start all of our designs for stages in Cinema 4D, and we do a lot of animations in Cinema 4D. We use it because of its versatility, and I don't need to tell a lot of you that, but I think it is important to bring up. We also find it to be very accessible. As you're familiar, a lot of people start in cinema, and we can use a lot of junior talent and grow them. And we also love the integrations that it's got. We love the plugins, and generally the pipeline that's built. So as far as bringing Cinema 4D to the stage, here's a quick look at our initial renderings for the Morgan Wallen Stadium Tour. So unlike most designers, Court Lawrence, our principal designer, starts in Cinema 4D. So often we'll start with a stage model, and then we'll build around said stage model. So basically you can see the baseline that we've got, and then we'll model out the thrust, all the lighting, and then we'll build our LED modules accordingly. So this helps us keep everything in scale. This helps us really pass things on directly to the designers or the fabrication teams, the production teams, the engineering teams who are actually going to have to build this. And then we'll also pass this on to drafts people who will take these models into Vectorworks and things along those lines, or vice versa, and kind of passing these things back and forth. So this was quite a feat for us. I remember watching Court spend his time in cinema, kind of drafting all these pieces, putting modules together. And when he first came up with this design, I thought to myself, like, this is pretty wild. Are you sure we can do this? It looks a little too big. It's kind of hard to tell how big the scale is. But we really did end up building it. You'll see some more of that later on in the presentation. Here's another example of a recent stage. Now this one we did not design. Shout out to Sooner Ruthier and Curtis Adams and Trevor Allstrand with the playground. But we wanted to share this because we thought it was a really interesting example of screen setups. And you can see we've got a floor here. We've got these angled screens that curve around all the way to the back. So we're building so that the audience in the background can actually see camera feeds, things along those lines of what's being built. So there's, it's really a focus on design here and there's another look at those returns and how those returns can be presented to the audience, and just a quick run through. And the reason that I'm talking so much about our use of Cinema 4D at the beginning of this of our design process is that not only are we using it to design the stages themselves and the screens, but then we also take that and we build what we call our secret weapon, these lens shaders. So not only are we designing the physical stages, but we're also building animations that go on said stages. And these lens shaders are a tool that help us build directly to said screens. And so if you remember the Morgan Wallen shape, here's an example of how we would have run out that lens shader to our Morgan Wallen stage. So basically the lens shader helps us reshape the CG camera lens. And many of you are probably familiar with spherical or fisheye rendering, which in some senses uses lens shaders. But lens shaders can be taken a step further, and we can use the geometry of the screen as a lens. So we create this geometry, and it matches the screen, and then we're able to render out pixel-perfect maps that run through. And so this is an example of a custom lens shader that's built in Cinema 4D directly, and then we're actually rendering right out of it. All right. So here's a quick example. Let's see. Oh, there we go. There's the animation of it. But and then here's a quick example of an outcome of said lens shader. So as you can see, this content for the Morgan Wallen tour is wrapping around, and as it's pushing through this setup, we basically got our screen built out as the lens shader itself. So here's a wireframe of what's actually going on for us to achieve that element, and you can see that our lens is actually the screen itself. And so this allows us to save a lot of time. And it also allows us to get perspectives that a lot of people, I think it's very surprising when you're in show, right? And it saves our artists a lot of work from having to set multiple cameras or try to trick perspective, or if we do want to do perspective gags, it's a big time saver all around. And here's what that content looks like as just a flat render. So this was a pretty fun screen. We were actually at about, I think, 12K total. Not always rendering 12K for this, but it did allow for a lot of fun. And so you can see that distortion as it warps around the sides, matching our lens, and then when we wrap it around onto the screen, we get a perfect perspective. All right, that brings us to the Megan Thee Stallion stage, which we had just seen previously. What you can see here is how we would normally render with a lens shader. Or even in other pixel perfect scenarios for these screens, we would have a camera set up for each screen so that we could gain perspective. And that would mean that we're having to render tons of different angles and stitch everything together, and it becomes quite a nightmare. So the goal would be then, how can we blend between different points of perspective per surface? And in the case we were looking at earlier, it's a camera per screen. And then we actually change that with this lens shader technique. It can be reduced down to a single render. In this example, instead of a bunch of cameras, we've actually replaced all those cameras with nulls. And so the perspective of each LED surface can all be one render. So this is another time-saving trick that we use in order to build out these pretty extensive perspective gags that allow us to really kind of change the name of the game. We call it our secret weapon for a reason. It's not so secret anymore, but if you guys have any questions about this later, you can come find me. But yeah, the changing these to a null from a simple camera and perspective piece is really what allows us to kind of build this out. And then here's just another example how you can see the perspective changing and what each camera is gathering, and where we're getting light. So in the bottom section, you'll see our pixel map itself laid out flat. And then here, as we move our nulls around, we're changing the perspective of each section without having to have multiple cameras and rendering out multiple elements. So just a sneak peek at what happens when we actually build, change, and distort these nulls. All right, similar to the lens shaders, here's a quick example of a wrap. So this is a piece we built for the Sphere. Not only do we use Cinema 4D for stage modeling, ArchViz, and for graphics for concert touring, but we also use it in research and development. We use it for ideation for all of our creative elements. So this was an idea for J Balvin doing an inaugural F1 performance on the Sphere, and he was playing in the parking lot of all places on a stage. So instead of inside on the Sphere, he was playing for the F1 race out in the parking lot. And they wanted to have concert visuals, so to speak. Now, they weren't timed necessarily to the music, but they were played during the performance. And then there was an advertising piece that ran the length of the week leading up to it. So this piece was actually scrapped, but we thought that it was fun, and the reason was that the Sphere does have a mascot that's quite similar to the J Balvin mascot, but you can see here these were some of our initial experiments. And you can see this guy, I think he really needs a piece of gum. And so, as I mentioned, we use this as an R&D tool so that we can previs ahead of time, build a quick model, build a quick lens shader, or a shader of some sort, and then we're off to the races. Uh-oh. And he is not too happy. Okay, he's actually pretty happy about it. All right, that's all right. He did great. It's crazy how he's just going to have more gum and, I don't know, right now. He's Now here it is unwrapped. So here's a quick look at those initial stages. So if you remember, we had gone from our initial pre-visualization stage, and this was the basis of that final render. Now the sphere is actually only 6K on the outside, unlike the, 16 by 16 internally, and I think a lot of people are doing 12K. But so it kind of made it a little bit simpler to work on this medium, and how we were able to do lower res renders for our tests and do a quick upscale for the final. Another example here, doing this simulation, and this was a branded look with J Balvin, and this one did end up playing on the sphere, and this was to support his up and coming Amigos single, and so this was the album art, and don't tell anyone, but we found the exact tree on CG Trader that they had used in the album art, so same tree. It's great. Who needs assets? Yeah. It's pretty fun. This was built by the wildly talented Brian Egan. Quite a stunning piece when it's at scale. And here that is unwrapped. Now, the challenge of the sphere is that it is a sphere. It has two sides. So you need to build out sections for each side of said sphere, so that people are at least gaining some perspective of what's going on across the board. And so this worked well. And what we found to be very interesting too is how the playback systems, etc. They were kind to have an After Effects template ready for us, but all in all, this was pretty straightforward as far as the production was concerned. It's just a matter of making sure that your perspectives and warps lay out correctly. Okay, so now we've taken a look at different lens shading techniques, wraps, warps, things along those lines. We can talk about how Cinema 4D is used on the stage. Now we've got a lot of different kinds of clients. We recently did a show for Capital One with Tom Brady and Duran Duran. We had recently done Calvin Harris with Mr. David himself. Thank you for your help on that. And so we kind of range all over the board, but a lot of our work ends up on large LED screens. So our workflow is really built for those things, hence the lens shader techniques. And when we're building for the screens, we're not always doing straight animations. A lot of times artists like to see themselves, and we like to showcase the artists on the screens. So not only do we have direct camera feeds that we use, but we also do a lot of shooting and VFX work to support their vision of what they'd like to see on the screen. So a lot of times what happens is somebody wants, somebody will say, I'd like this specific moment in the show. I've got this vision, this is what it is, and a lot of times that means that we've got to shoot, direct, and build for very specific screens and very specific moments. So here we can see our talent giving a shoot, and then we've moved into some CG elements in a CG workflow. So you can see we go from the original plate to a tracked OG face, to a render in cinema, to then the final comp. This was used for the song Gift and a Curse. And so this was using Keen tools on the face tracking. And it came back around and right back into Cinema 4D for these beautiful snakes. And there's our final comp. So the challenge from here is that we have to put these onto the screens. Now, for this show specifically, the screens themselves were not 16:9, they were actually vertical. So what happens a lot of times is that when the final renders are done, we'll pass on to editors. We'll pass on to folks whose job it is strictly to pixel map solely. This is done usually in After Effects, funny enough. We kind of skip Premiere. We find that After Effects is a stronger tool. Once our renders are out, that's where we're passing them off to. Here's another fun example from the same show, using Keen tools yet again into cinema with the Alembic format, using this match move look. Now, because these screens were more of a 9:16 and not a 16:9, this look itself actually had to be stretched across all of the screens. And so then you have perspective questions. We did not use a lens shader. This was actually just stretched and mapped into the final render. But all around, I think it brings a larger than life look. At certain times you're using specific screens to do specific things. And when you do take it to the full look, you've got quite a bold element there. All right, moving on. So for the Morgan Wallen tour, we're using that because I think the screen itself had kind of lent itself well to a lot of different perspective elements because of the curved nature of it and how it came around to the sides. For those of you who were watching earlier, we said we use Cinema 4D for its for a lot of its integration and plug-in purposes. This was done with X particles and rendered in Octane. It's a fluid sim. It's about 30 seconds long. It's cached on a single machine and then distributed to final render to our farm using Deadline, everybody's favorite. Now you can see here we've got some cubes, and those cubes were eventually moved and wrapped, but these cubes are actually placeholders for where we wanted to pipe in camera feeds of the artist on stage. So the end goal was that we are seeing the artist, the band, in performance in a section that's protected from the water, and the water is splashing around them. So that's what those are for, and that's our basic look. Here's a quick look at that in an unwrapped version off the screen. So this was kind of the final render. And because of the nature of our projects, it's difficult for us to do simulations like this in full, so we do have to use some wizardry to edit them together. A lot of times our clients are coming to us asking for wild things on wild timelines, and sometimes we're coming up with wild ideas on wild timelines. So I can't blame them fully. I think this one was our idea. But I think it really worked out, and you can see some of those blending techniques that were used here in post. Flashing some lighting to the music. And then here's an even more exciting example of this in use at the concert itself. So you can see that those other cubes actually ended up wrapping around onto the sides of the screens, if you can see the curved nature of the screens. So we've got a single cube in the front. We wanted to showcase the drummer Taco, Marcanino, everybody calls him Taco. It was kind of his moment. He'd written the music for this breakdown, and so we said, hey, let's start on you. It'll be a big drum moment, and it'll kind of thrash around, and we'll move into a big guitar solo. And so, I think what's so fun about working in concerts is that we're moving in sync with the band a lot of the times, and when it's a good relationship, we're actually helping develop musical moments, transitions, and then building animations around those pieces. So I think this was a really fun example. And as you can see, there's a lot of other things going on. We're not making a movie. We're not making, a billboard. what's happening is we've got lighting, we've got lasers, we've got performers on stage. You know, there's a crowd, there's a floor, so there's quite a few things going on. So while it is a gigantic screen, we also don't want to overpower. You know, we want to show off and we want to showcase, but we do need to support the bands themselves. And so it's really just how we design and you know, how we showcase the band. Here's another example of that screen, and you can see this really fun perspective gag that we're doing. And then another fun piece with the camera feed. So we've developed what at certain points looks like a tarp that we're projecting on was the main goal here. You know, we're kind of going for this industrial look, and then we've got a perspective gag, and it really it works from the front on and from kind of a 70-degree angle from the side. When you're looking in, it really feels as though the screen is disappearing, and we're kind of supporting these pieces. So this was for Morgan Wallen's Heartless. It was a song that him and Diplo came out with, so it was kind of a trappy experience. Again, we're trying not to show off so much here because there's a lot of pyro. It's kind of a hard-hitting experience. We really wanted this to be more of a set extension of sorts as opposed to concert visuals. And I think it really came through. So thank you to the team for that, Chadwick Makela. And here's another piece by Chadwick Makela where we're doing a really similar piece where we're often trying to showcase depth in these screens and you know, make the screen disappear. How can we do that? That's really the end goal on a lot of these moments. So you'll see that we're actually not even going to the edge of the screen with a lot of this piece. It's set back. We've got dark, deep lighting that allows for the lighting on stage to showcase. And then we're really not giving away a lot of our gag, you know, from in-person perspective. You're starting to see what feels a little bit more like magic as things start to disappear on stage. You get a quick look. You know, I think the camera feed is really the thing that pulls people out, and so we try to work with our camera directors on setting up these shots so that they're consistent each night, that they work within the gag themselves with, you know, however we're placing it. So there is a little bit of a concert going on backstage as well as on stage. And one more piece here from the Morgan Wallen show. Now this is a unique solution showcasing our use of Cinema 4D with other software pieces. So as you can see, we've got these neon elements. Instead, what we did was, instead of rendering out an entire sequence, we rendered each of these as a frame. So these are all single frames that are edited together later on in After Effects. This saves us on render time, saves us on sequencing, artist pain, you know. Time coding is not an easy thing, and laying out all these animations. So this was you know, a build with Cinema 4D and After Effects. And here's a quick look at what that looks like when it's laid out. So this is just one piece of that, you know, laid over the background. And then we comped this in as the sun was rising. And you know, it just gives us a lot of tools to play with. And here's a quick look at what that project looked like. But you know, it's kind of fun to see it go from and turn into this piece. And so all of those keyframes, or all of that was built with just a few keyframes. Instead of having, you know, hundreds of them to build it all in Cinema 4D, we're able to do that in After Effects with single frame animations. just saving us a lot of time. All right. And in After Effects, we rigged control sliders of the expressions to drive the animation. And that's what allowed us to have just a few of those keyframes. Now we are an entertainment-based company that focuses on LED installations across the board, but we also I've got a background working on XR stages, green screen, VFX, as well as some of our more senior teams. So here's an example of some raw green screen footage
Day 22 of keeping my
shot on a red
as far
camera
away from cyber risk as possible.
for a campaign that we were
No need for
recently working
disaster
on.
recovery out here. Okay, it's a bit cold, but not a hacker inside. Day 22 of keeping my business as far away from cyber risk.
So you
as
can see
possible.
that this
No
is
need for
pretty
disaster
straightforward,
recovery
raw
out here.
footage.
Okay, it's a bit cold, but not a hacker.
And here's our virtual production
22 of keeping
for the
my
final of
business
this.
as far away
So
from
the fun
cyber
piece
risk
about
as
this is that
possible.
we are capturing real-time
No need
camera
for disaster
tracking,
recovery out here.
feeding that to Unreal for a real-time
Okay, it's a bit
preview,
cold, but
and then
not
the
a
final
hacker
shot
inside.
we used the Unreal Engine environment
Day
and
22
rendered in
of keeping
Cinema
my
4D with
business as far
Redshift.
away from cyber risk as possible.
So this is
need
those
for
new
disaster
tools that
recovery
everybody's
out
building
here.
are really coming online for us here.
Okay, it's a bit cold, but not a hacker inside. Day 22 of keeping my business.
All right. And here's a look at what that looked like as it was coming in from Unreal and what we were building out. And this was actually used with, we built this with Volume Builder. So it gave us some new options to build out our ice cave. And then here's what that
Day
final
22
looked
of
like.
keeping my business as far away
Final
from cyber
comp
risk as
out of
possible.
Cinema 4D.
No need for disaster recovery out here. Okay, it's a bit cold, but not a hacker inside.
And you'll see the new inclusion of our polar bear friend. All right, lucky we're not him. Glad to be here with you guys and not in an ice cave. Now, looking forward at production trends. Now, a lot of these are tools that everybody's familiar with. For us, I just want to kind of call out some things that we like to use that make our jobs easier, that we're excited about, and that our team is happy with. So what we're seeing right now are faster turnarounds with higher expectations. As I mentioned, concert touring is kind of funny that way. A lot of times people will call and they'll say, hey, we're building a show, we have 3 weeks. It needs to go out on the road. Maybe we have 6 weeks. Concerts are long. They're 60 to 90 minutes. That means that we are having to figure out how to build 60 to 90 minutes of complex timed animation, rendered at usually strange and large resolutions, often with many screens. So a lot of the details that you see today that we talked about with the lens shader techniques, things along those lines, how we're editing these things together, we're always looking for efficiencies, as everyone always is. But for us, it's imperative for the health of our teams, for the outcome of our clients and their goals. What we love right now, we're working with everybody all around the world. I think we're all liking the work from home mentality. We do have a small studio in Los Angeles, California, but having the talent pool opened up to all of you and everyone is fantastic, and it's, I think, really allowed us to grow as individuals and meet a lot of great people. What we're seeing is more integration across the board. I think everybody's starting to see these things come together. It's not just AI that's multimodal these days. We are all tying our tools together, as the weeks go on, which is a fantastic way to live. And in design trends, like I had mentioned, a lot of these are tools that everybody's familiar with. They're not new. but some of them are newer than others. But these are a lot of items that we're excited about and using in our workflows right now. Like Volume Builder that we just used to put our spot out. We do a lot of character animation that would not be possible without the tools that Maxon's been building, and we do it quickly and with high efficiency. It's pretty amazing what we're able to get out. Just a few years ago, it just wasn't even possible. Also, the camera tracking tools and the calibration tools that we're able to bring into our pipeline. Okay, guys. I'll send out some of the branding and contact info. It's at the end of this presentation. Really at the end of the day, I think a big piece for us with Maxon as a whole is that our team is using it not only for like front-end production for physical and ArchViz, but also for MoGraph, for VFX, pretty much across the board. And that brings us to our Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Excellent job, Anders. Any questions while we have him live? Otherwise, he's going to go back to the studio. Okay, question from Patrick 4D. The question is, how did you come up with the name Raw Cereal?
We were eating breakfast. I know, it's crazy. Okay, so we were doing Kid Cudi, my business partner Court and I, and it was a terrible show in the sense of it was moving so quickly. We built him a lift that rose him about 18 feet off the ground. We built what we called the donuts, or the cake eventually, because it was LED that was stacked like layers of a cake, almost in a pyramidal form, and we had like quite an extensive lighting and laser package. The lift that we had purchased ended up being more like a carnival ride than anything else. It was terrifying, to say the least, and when he got up there, it was all hell broke loose, and so he cut it, we cut the whole thing. We ended up having to make, I think he cut about 12 songs that night, so the next day we had to figure out how do we make, I think in the end 6 of them needed to be completely redone. We had about 18 hours until the show, and we were at breakfast the day after, sitting at the diner in Van Nuys, and Court looked at me and he said, "Have you ever had raw cereal? Do you like raw cereal?" And I was like, "What, you mean like a handful of cereal from a box?" And he said, "Yeah, like a handful of cereal." I said, "Yeah, it's great." And that was born, that was it. That was our first show that we had worked on together, and I'd been looking to start my own company. I'd been a freelance for a long time. He already had his own company, and we just said, look, if we can get through that, we can get through anything together. Let's do this thing, and it's been amazing. I couldn't ask for a better business partner. Couldn't ask for a better name. Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah.
That's how Raw Cereal was born.
That's how Raw Cereal was born.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
From a failed cake.
From a failed cake.
Yeah, and a dangerous carnival ride.
It was.
I love it.
The Jonas Brothers had used it, and they survived. Let's be clear. Okay. People had survived it. Yeah.
It's happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other breakfast-related questions? Oh.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
awesome.
Thank you,
Let's give a big round of
everybody.
applause to Anders. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye today, Internet. This is the last presentation, but we will be back
Internet.
tomorrow for the final day of SIGGRAPH 2024 here at the Maxon booth. We will see you then.
Thank you. Thank you.